So, Robert, the way I read this, Twitter says it was a coordinated social engineering attack that successfully targeted some of our employees that had access to tools. What this says to me is that this was a con more than it was a particularly sophisticated technical attack. And I'm reminded all of Twitter's employees are working from home. Is this perhaps the first major red flag of the work from home era? I mean, maybe somebody showed up pretending to be the cable repairman and got access to these Twitter accounts?
Well, it's the first one that's made so much media. I can tell you from a personal experience, our company obviously does cybersecurity. We manage a lot of major corporations. We're seeing the growth in phishing like we've never seen before. I think this is the first high profile role of phishing. And the funny thing is, as you say, the more things get complicated, the simpler they become. Phishing, while it may not be a complicated attack, really preys on people that have insecurity fundamentally with their passwords or working from home. Home computers are not as safe as work computers. And so what we think we know at this point about the Twitter attack was that somehow their employees were targeted through a phishing attack, which is really growing like never before. And that's how the accounts were compromised, is what we think.
Now, and granted, we don't know, so I'm going on the social engineering component of this as it was described, but in a way, this is a digital version of Ocean's 14, right? This is somebody who went in with a con of some sort, got access to accounts from employees who have high access. Do companies have to rethink how they deploy security, how they investigate breaches with so many employees in so many different places?
Well, I love your analogy. People that work in cybersecurity have been in the dark for a long time, in the back, and this is kind of the golden age for cybersecurity and for hackers. And so to your analogy, this is about as sexy as an attack as you can get in the hacker cyber world. And it's fundamentally ransomware driven. And what we know is they ask for a certain amount of cryptocurrency, which is another problem because it's really impossible to trace. Fundamentally, to your question, the problem today is people are working from home, people are working in the office. How do I know who you are? And so one of the fastest growing areas of cybersecurity right now is around something called identity. The idea of proving who you are comes down to this vertical called identity. And there's a number of stocks that are in this area that we think are going to do really well over the short and midterm, people like SailPoint and CyberArk. And fundamentally what these stocks do is they authenticate and prove that you are who you are. Because in this new age, there is no more perimeter. People are working from everywhere.
Hey, Robert, it's Deirdre here. When you talk about identity, over the years, we've heard so much about the importance of two-factor or multi-factor identification that is supposed to help with that. But this attack, correct me if I'm wrong, totally bypassed those kinds of controls. So what can consumers do? What are they looking at right now in this kind of hack? How can they protect themselves?
Well, it's a great question. The analogy I always give people is people say to me, well, if multi-factor authentication can be hacked, and there was a hack earlier this year that got in between the authentication, but it's kind of like somebody breaking into your house. Just because somebody can break down a door or break your window doesn't mean you shouldn't have doors and windows. So multi-factor authentication is kind of the baseline. Everybody should have it in every application they can have. Incidentally, one of the other things that we see a lot of consumers doing is opening up permission from one application to another. So I can go from Instagram to Twitter, from Facebook, and so on. And while it's inconvenient, we always recommend people narrow those permissions. It's a bit of a hassle, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, but we're highly bullish on this area of identity. We think this will become one of the fastest growing areas of security. I mean, we recently acquired a company in the UK. We're doubling down on this area because we think in the new world, proving who you are online will become critical to the future.